what we're going to talk about now is streaming, right? I think you heard Andrew talk a little earlier about how streaming is a big part of what we're seeing in terms of the global ecosystem and what's happening in the entertainment industry and so forth. So we're going to get into it, and I couldn't have two better people to talk about it with than alum Brad Beal, right? And Spotify's Lauren Jarvis. I'm going to start with Lauren because Andrew talked about podcasting this morning in terms of some of the insights, and he said that that was really driving growth in the space. How is, just basics, how is podcasting different from music?
Well, I think that the listener comes to podcasting with a slightly different intention than they do on the music side. So one of the things that you see with podcasting is a very, very engaged listener who listens for incredibly long periods of time. And we were actually talking about this a little bit. I think one of the interesting things in podcasting on the commercial side is you can sometimes upsell the mid-roll unit, which is an indicator of the fact that even more so than at the pre-roll, if you get to the middle of a podcast, you're actually even more engaged. So that's something on the listener side that I think is distinctive from potentially the music experience or any other video experience where the eyeball is really important.
Hold on right there. Just knowledge check. Everybody with us with mid-roll unit? No?
So
what is a mid-roll unit?
For any basically digital advertising, if you see a ad that is inserted into the content, so it could be on Hulu, YouTube, Spotify, throughout a specific show or period, there's a pre-roll, which is the first ad that you watch or listen to. There can be one or multiple mid-rolls, which happen throughout the content. And then there's a post-roll, which would come at the end of the content. So
going back to your point about user engagement, traditionally with other forms of content, that mid-roll opportunity might not be valued as highly, but you're saying with podcasts, it is.
Yes. So generally speaking, with video content, the pre-roll, sometimes the units all get sold at the same price. It really depends how you're selling them, but the pre-roll could be considered the most valuable unit because when you're watching video, that is the moment in which the user or the viewer is going to be most engaged, is at the very beginning of the content. Whereas with podcasting, because I think podcasting is uniquely loved because of the intimacy of the experience that the listener has. You know, a lot of brands have recognized that if you have that listener in the middle of the content, they are even more engaged than at the beginning of the content. And so this is one way in which I think the format is really different, and the users or the listeners or the viewers are really different in this format as well.
Categorization is different too, right?
Categorization in terms of format?
When we just think about music genres, it seems like there's a much shorter list than there is for podcasts.
Yeah, well, we do this campaign every year called Wrapped, which actually looks at music listeners' experiences with music. And we've built many new genre types around that. And I think that there are many, many music types as well on the genre basis. I think that what is different, more so than genre, is format. There is short form podcasts, which can be 2 to 3 minutes long. There are episodic narrative podcasts, which can be, 6 or 12 episodes that tell a single story, Serial being kind of the first major one that broke through. There is what we call always on podcasting, which is generally speaking interview or conversation at the mic, commentary at the mic, which is much more similar to radio style programming. And then, across genres, there's all different genres, the ones that people are most familiar with, like true crime, comedy, news, but we also see things popping up and tested in scripted, poetry, sci-fi is a big genre that I'm starting to see grow. I was just pitched yesterday a home improvement show, which I think is always really interesting when you see also formats that are uniquely visual entering the podcast space. What does it mean to do home improvement in audio? Or last year, there are now many shows in this category, but I was thinking a lot about food. What does it mean to launch and tell a food journey without visuals?
So I'm going to pitch you on a sci-fi home improvement show.
Honestly,
Right? A podcast
it
about
might find a really great engaged audience.
right, home improvement on an alien planet, right? That would be really,
I like it, actually.
Okay, let's do that.
Sci-fi is having a resurgence across all content categories right now. So I think mixing sci-fi with anything has a good chance right now.
All right, collab. Okay, so I want to bring Brad into the conversation. You heard us talk about the advertising implications for podcasting as one of the revenue streams. And one of my hopes about this conversation is that we can help you kind of expand your view regarding the ways in which we monetize streaming, right? Because it's not just about subscription revenue. One of the reasons that I wanted Brad to be here is because obviously when we talk about Amazon's streaming service, it's part of a larger business. So, Brad, could you just talk a little bit about how you see the service in the context of Amazon's business?
Sure. Good morning. Thanks, Jay, for having me. Super excited to be here. Prime Video is definitely unique. We're part of a bundled service. So when you're a Prime member, you get, of course, 2-day free shipping, now 1-day free shipping, and other benefits. We have a music service. We have Prime Video. There's cloud storage, all kinds of things. Everybody should be a Prime member. Everybody probably is a Prime member.
Just out of curiosity, wait. Raise your hand if you are a Prime member.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
We appreciate your business.
See, this conference did what it was supposed to do.
Thank you. So, we at Prime Video, we live in the service of Prime. Our job is to help acquire Prime members, help retain Prime members, and give them a reason to come back to our ecosystem over and over and over again. And I get asked the question all the time, like, how does it make sense for you guys to spend all this money on video content, when you're part of in the US, $119 a year service? But what happens is, when a customer engages, think about their journey as a Prime member. So you start a 30-day free trial. When a customer engages with video during their 30-day free trial, they are, measurably more likely to convert into a paid Prime membership. Okay. And while it's hard to prove causality, the lift is so large that there's no doubt. So we get lift on conversion rates. When they consume video during their 12-month first year membership, they also renew at higher rates. So there's lift there. So we get, lift on conversion, lift on renewal. And we also find people that begin their Prime free trial based on a video offer. So you go to Jack Ryan detail page and it says, watch now, start your 30-day free trial. And so those people begin their journey as Prime members through that. And actually what we're seeing now internationally, there are some locales where Prime is new and shipping and retail are relatively unknown. And the majority of customers are coming in through the video benefit, not through the shipping benefit. So in countries like India and Mexico and Brazil, where again, Prime is relatively new, it is video that is starting the flywheel. And then, then we need to convince them to shop. In the US, it's the other way around. Right. They begin shopping and enjoy their shipping benefit, and we need to convince them to use the video benefit. So the bottom line is all these lifts are measurable. They have economic value to the company. We can measure that. We create our own P&L based on that, and it all makes perfect sense. It all works. Okay, so I want to drill down on how that informs your thinking around the content you should have available, but I want to go back to what you just said about some of the differences between North America, let's say, and India or other places where the video seems to play more than the shopping, right? So there are regional idiosyncrasies with every market. Yep. Given that you play in so many markets, are there things that you have learned from your international customers that you can apply here or vice versa? You're right. Every market is unique. And you really, it's dangerous to generalize. Even the US and Canada and Australia and the UK, these big English speaking markets, they're very, very different. So, I think the thing we've learned is don't generalize. And what that means for us is we put people in market in all of our most important territories. So I have a team in UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Brazil, Japan, India, because we can't sit here and understand their local tastes. We need local people. Amazon and Prime Video need to be a local company in those locales. So, and it's all different. And yeah, there are probably some universal truths. People like, theatrical movies. They want to see them sooner.
Right.
You know, they like to binge, serialized television. These are kind of universal truths, that apply in any locale. But again, we're super careful to not, overly generalize either direction.
And not trying to say that you would generalize, but have you ever tried an experiment because you saw something, say, in India and said, ooh, maybe we should try that in England?
Definitely on formats of shows. A great example is we have a show that we created in Japan. It's called Documental. And think of it as Jackass meets Big Brother. And so you have...
So Big Jackass.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. You said that, not me. But it's 10 comedians and hosted by a very famous Japanese comedian. They're in a room. There's, a big cash prize on the table, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the competition is, if you laugh, you're out. It's awesome, actually. But if you can imagine what happens, the jackass part, like if you're trying to make other people laugh, it can devolve pretty quickly.
Yes.
But we are now importing that Japanese format in many, many locales all over the world. Rebel Wilson is going to be the host of we call it LOL, Last One Laughing.
Oh, okay.
We've rebranded it, but Rebel Wilson will host the version of this in Australia, for example. Try to get a big star, take the format, local talent, and so that's been something, again, kind of formats that we've seen successful, and
Love it.
Importing those around the world or exporting them.
We're doing actually the same thing with podcasts at Spotify. We are starting to adapt podcasts that have worked in one market into another market. And I think that to put, what I would call my fine point on it is that localization and adaptation is different than direct translation. And so as we think about, and as we've done some tests ourselves and also seen some partners in the market do some tests to take content from one territory and then make it work or localize it into other territories. The most important thing is that the colloquialisms are right and that the refinements that are necessary to actually speak to the culture that is receiving that adaptation is done with a really deep eye towards the culture of that local territory.
Can I ask you, how do you master that localization process? Is that a human thing where you just have humans who are of the culture? Is that analytics? Are you using any kind of data to help you inform that? What are you, market research? What are you doing?
No, I'm speaking more on the content development and creation side of things.
Right.
So, through the scripting process, not doing a direct one-to-one translation of a script if you have it, but actually having it scripted appropriately by someone from that local territory. So it's not translation like you would receive on a video that has
No, subtitles are...
Right, subtitles.
Right. So,
thank you. The other piece is also who the host is, or who the talent is that's actually reading or articulating the script. I think it's really important that even some nuances like in Latin America, each local, it's the same language, Spanish, in most of the countries there outside of Brazil, but even the way that you express yourself locally is very different from one country to the next. And so those sorts of considerations are also really important in the production process.
Love it. Love it. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the kind of larger opportunity we see here for streaming. But first, I want to get to just this question about adoption, right? I think what's different about Amazon and Spotify is that when you think about a Netflix, it's really about primarily the subscription, direct to consumer, get the consumer, keep the consumer. right? And have them paying directly just for the content, access to the library. Whereas for you guys, there's also an enterprise component, right? There are other things that are going on. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about adoption, it's not just about whether or not Jane in Vancouver is going to adopt. It's also about whether or not other stakeholders in the ecosystem are willing to engage with these platforms, are willing to partner with you, et cetera. Lauren, could you talk a little bit about kind of how do you find potential partners to collaborate with? How do you get folks, for example, to invest in advertising against podcasts or to partner with Spotify on activations or whatever it is? Like, how do you get them as excited about the opportunity you see as you are?
Yeah, well, I think for us, we see music and audio as very creator-led ecosystems. And so to bring listeners to the ecosystem, you have to access creators and enable creators to have a level of independence to directly then speak to their listeners. And then I think the advertising is something that comes on top of that. We announced in the podcast space at CES SAI technology, which is a more dynamic way of inserting ads into the space. I do think the interesting thing about where we are in podcasting in particular today is that the consumption side of podcasting is very advanced, whereas the brand side is less advanced. So last year we saw 200% increase on the consumption of podcasts on Spotify.
Can you say that again?
200%. Is that the one you wanted to say?
So last year you saw a 200% increase?
Yes. Yeah.
Not
so
bad.
we believe this is a watershed moment for audio, in the same way that video had a watershed moment on a consumption basis on mobile, maybe 10 years ago, but then the brands only have begun speeding up maybe 5 or so years ago. And I do think the dynamics of the commercialization are similar in podcasting. We don't think that the ad dollars coming into the space yet have necessarily caught up to where the consumption piece is. But as a platform, and with our mission to connect creators to their audiences, we're in the spot that we want to be in for right now to lead where we'll go in the next few years.
I love it. All right. So, I was talking about this kind of, how do we localize and whether we use tech and whether we use people and so on. Brad, I want to come back to tech and just talk a little bit about analytics and data. One of the cool things about having a streaming service is that you can know a lot more about people's preferences. Can you talk a little bit about what that information does for a company like Amazon, right? Is it simply just to kind of, help understand people's tastes, or are there other kinds of ways that you can utilize that?
I think you have to look at different types of content that are on our platform. So what I do, I have the most awesome job in the world, by the way. What I do is license movies and TV shows for Prime Video. So this is other people's content. We buy earlier and earlier, but generally, you have a lot to look at, and often a lot of data. So for example, we buy a lot of library movies, and TV shows. So this is in our transactional service, like our friends at Fandango, we have a transactional service. And it turns out that transactional usage is super predictive of streaming usage. So we can take that data, and I know kind of what we should be paying for library movies and TV shows. So that's kind of one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, like Lauren was talking about, when you're dealing with a creator, there's no data that helps you. There really isn't. And it would be a huge mistake to go in and say, oh, we've got this model and, you should change this in your script. What you want to do is just find the best creators out there, give them the opportunity to tell their stories, give them the resources to make their stories alive and rich, and generally get out of the way. So think about that as a spectrum. Stuff that exists, data is super, super helpful. It frustrates the studios to no end that we have. They tease us about our, the machine we have in the back that's cranking out values, but it's again, highly predictive. Creators don't go there. It's just it's not helpful, and it would be a huge mistake to do so.
That's right. So you shouldn't be telling me how to make my show about sci-fi home improvement.
We would never dare to do.
Right. You wouldn't tell me home's got to be on Mars, not Venus. You would just let me run.
right. That's
Okay, I like that. So maybe I'll mess with both of you. All right. So, you know, streaming, we've kind of now trained the market to subscribe to access content. And certainly here in North America, but I think you're seeing that globally now. How would you see, what does the future look like to you? What do you think of the opportunity? Have we peaked? Are we, you know, is there opportunities for growth? And if there's opportunities for growth, where are they?
I mean, I'll start, like, you know, the opportunity is every broadband household in the world. And we're not close to peaking that, right? And so that's the way we look at it. Like, how are we doing against every broadband household in the world? We announced in our last quarterly earnings report, there are over 150 million Prime members globally. Every one of those Prime members has access to Prime Video. But, you know, we're not close to peaking that out. So I think we have a long ways to go. You know, that to me is super exciting. Those are big numbers, right. But there's way more growth to be found there.
All right, Lauren, you Ms. 200% growth. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that on the audio side of things, the way that I look at the future is that this isn't about podcasts. This is about audio, and it isn't just about radio. It's about audio. So in my mind, when you think of what it is in your lives that you can control with any physical device today, there's a world where all of that can be controlled with your voice. And there's also a world where you can consume many different styles of content, both ones that exist today and ones that may not already, through audio. And so what we are trying to accomplish right now at Spotify is taking on podcasts. But when we speak about what that really means, it's in the US, it's the $4 billion radio market, the $60+ billion connected speaker market. And then, you can envision a world where there's a whole host of other connected home products, which I'm sure is how you guys think about it as well, that all comes together through the dominance of audio.
Love it. Love it. Now, what we haven't talked about really is business leadership. And as we get more global with these services, obviously that means you're going to have people and assets kind of sprinkled and spread out all over the place. Time zones, work cultures, it can be challenging. Can you talk a little bit about like how you coordinate with folks in these different regions?
You want to go?
Yeah, I mean, we're in 79 markets at Spotify. We have a global approach similar to the one that you spoke about, which is that we try and respect the local market and hire people into the local markets who really understand what it means to create in those markets and build the appropriate and the right business cultures in those markets. But we also are highly connected through the world that we are highly connected through on email, hangouts, et cetera. I think that from my opinion as a manager, it's really important to have a culture and a mission that can be unified across the company, because that is what helps to facilitate growth at scale, but then to also recognize where you need to have local inputs that then bubble up into that kind of unified view.
You're right, it's hard. Again, I have teams in 12 cities in 9 countries. But here's the thing that I've learned. You really need to build a self-sufficient team on the ground in that country made up of experts, who understand customer tastes, who understand business norms. And we just try to push that decision-making down as far as we can. So my view is on all those teams, my job is to get them the resources they need to be successful and then generally get out of the way. That like you hire the right people, give them the resources they need to be successful, and generally really good things happen. We do have at Amazon kind of a strong corporate culture, right, that, is kind of helpful in unifying how people think about problems and opportunities. And so the other thing that's a challenge is making sure we can teach that out to people who are not close to the mothership every day. And that's also hard. But the thing that helps with that a little bit is my teams are not off on an island. There's Amazon in these countries. There's retail, there's AWS, there's other things. And so we can kind of plug them into a local, Amazon ecosystem that will help them with the general culture. And then, they can go and chase, and put things into place to make our video service awesome for local customers.
Love it. Okay, so I do want to give you guys a chance to ask some questions too, but because I don't think this will come up from anybody else. We got a bunch of students in this room. Any advice that you would give them about, careers in entertainment? Don't do it. No.
Go ahead. No, you should totally do it. It's awesome. I love my job. I think here's the thing to understand about careers anyways. I probably had like 4 really distinct careers. I started my life as an engineer. I then got into DirecTV and then started a sports training. But it's zigzags, right? And so you're not going to find the next zag if you're not looking for it. And so I think you gotta, always be looking and connecting. That is super helpful. Be okay. Don't expect your first job or your second job or your nth job will be the end all be all. My advice to people is at any point in your career, you should be saying 2 things. Am I learning something and am I having fun? And if those things, the answer, and by the way, that's, that might not be true for short periods of time, but generally over a period of time, taken as a whole, that should be true. And when those things are no longer true, go find another job, go find another role. And if anybody's interested in a job at Amazon, the thing that I will tell you is, and I'm dead serious about this, every job is posted online. If you submit your resume, or if you apply for a job online, both a hiring manager and a recruiting executive will look at that and give it due consideration. There's no insider stuff. We're too big. We're 800,000 employees. Right. So if you want to know what jobs are available, go to our website and submit. Because everything's there, and that's the way we find talented people for our company.
Love it.
Yeah, I think bouncing off of the zigzagging piece a little bit, I believe that success is a combination of acquiring the right skills that you need as well as doing something that you love. And you're not always able to do both of those things at once. So I think that the zigzagging to me is a little bit about navigating your way through acquiring the relevant skills that you need to be in the position that you view yourself in long term, while also not straying from things that you actually want to be doing, care about, are passionate about, etc. But that can be a difficult trade-off to make at times. And I think remembering that there are moments in your career where you may be working really hard to achieve things that are required in order to get where you actually want to get, and that it isn't always maybe going to be fun, is important. And then when that part taps out, you need to also know when you need to be in a place where you can really express yourself and be the person that you want to be and do something that you love. And also learning the importance of saying no, because I think that it's easy early in your career to say yes to everything. And there's nothing more powerful than the first time that you say no and you get what you want because you said no.
Yeah. All right. Any questions from you guys? Ooh, lots of questions. All right. Do we have runners still? Yeah? Okay. We got one question over here, and a couple questions here in the middle.
Yeah, Brett, I had a quick question. So how does Amazon look at the retelling of stories? So obviously, there are multiple movies that came out about Fire Festival and Aaron Hernandez and OJ. So when, there's multiple streaming services that are making original content and another one says, oh, we think we can do it better. How does Amazon really look at that?
I don't think I don't think we ever sit around and go, I think we can do that better. It's a little more fundamental than that. Is you can imagine a storyteller has, a unique take on a specific story. And these these stories can all live together. They could even live together on the same platform. That's okay. So it's, I don't think anybody's really running around trying to replicate ideas and saying you could do it better. When you have something big, is newsworthy, wouldn't be unusual for a number of storytellers to go, I have an interesting take on that, but it's not about, kind of one-upsmanship. Again, we go back and go, hey, what's your pitch? What's your unique take on this? Our customer is going to love this, and then, move forward on that basis.
So this question is kind of going back to the lag between, hi guys, I'm short. I'll stand up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's helpful, actually.
Stacey Robinson from Fox Deportes. So my question goes back to your comment about consumption is so much forward than our brands or, what we're seeing as rights holders here. So my question is, how are you encouraging your sales team, be them ad sales or sponsorship, since working in sports, how are you encouraging these sales teams to convince these brands for buy-on when we're seeing that consumption is rising, but it is kind of a saturated market? So what are you doing to bridge that gap?
I think that's for you.
Yeah, I think training a new message is challenging. So I can't say exactly what we're doing, but something that I hope that we will do more of in 2020 is helping to show brands that that sponsoring authentic content that isn't highly, regulated by the brand in any way, where they are not necessarily coming in to fix the messaging of the content, but they actually are really buying the audience that they want to buy and then leaving a little bit of freedom to the creator. I think that is an important piece that needs to happen in audio on the training side in order for more money to be unlocked. And then the other part, which is a bit more obvious on the podcast side, is it still is a lot of DR brands that are in podcasting today. And one of the things that we have natural access to as a platform that has sold audio for a very long time is to bring those, top 100 and key account brands into audio and to sell the proposition through them.
Last question.
Nice socks, but
Me or Jay or Lauren?
I like yours. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
So
Mine are
this
just
is a question for both. So with the change of sound and culture in music, how do your companies appropriately prepare for the increase in genre bending artists such as Nas X and Tyler the Creator?
What do you mean? How do you appropriately prepare?
So with the genre bending, for example, Tyler the Creator wins for Best Rapper, but for Grammy, and he's like, well, I don't want to be seen as a rapper. I'm not a rapper.
Got it.
And Nas X is like, I want to be country, but it's seen as rap. So how do you guys prepare, as far as categorizing these people?
So
For discovery.
do you mind if I?
No, please.
So
It's
I
very-
actually think that we have incredibly deep roots in not only doing a great job at this, but even facilitating some of the creativity in this market through the playlist, because we take a two-pronged approach to what it means to playlist artists. And we are the only company in this space that really very early on committed to both personalization and curation together to facilitate the best listening into the ears of all of our listeners. And what that means is on the personalization side, we have algorithms that look at metadata and assemble playlists to, put the right and interesting playlists together. But on the curation side, we also still have actual editors who are tastemakers who are helping to say, this artist is an artist that you should be listening to on the country side as well as on the hip hop or the rap side. And so an artist like Lil Nas X could easily be in both playlists, and we can then adjust metadata so that it's recognized in both playlists. And we maintain really, really close relationships with artists to understand how they view themselves in addition to how the metadata might suggest that they should view themselves. So going back to our 2019 Wrapped campaign, we brought forth all these new genres. I wish I could remember remember some of the crazy names that they had. But, we effectively introduced this concept of genre fluidity to what we told our listeners they were listening to. And it was nearly everyone who I saw post about it that actually got the genre fluid classification, because most people are listening to music from all over the world. The one other thing I would also note is on the global point is more and more stems from different cultures or musical elements from different cultures are being brought into all of these different traditional genres. So you might get, a stem from Latin music that's brought into a hip hop song. You see more and more artists who classify themselves that way. And I think that, what that means from the musical side is really wonderful. And it just means there's going to be more and more creativity. So I think we're doing a really good job with that, actually.
All right, we got to leave it there. Are you guys going to be around for a little more of the day?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so maybe you can find, if you see there were extra questions, maybe you can find these folks later in the morning. But thank you for spending the time with us. Great conversation.